Shirley here with Jupiter point of Thales. And the soul is on deneb algedi, which is a great time to talk about um, royal figures and what the Chinese call the mandate of the heaven. And so we'll begin with the time that humanity knew royalty. Okay, humanity knew kings and kingdoms. Because that was a way to organize people, because that's what we knew and that's it, because we don't know farther back into history, because those who preserved the history and had the means to do that were kings, whatever. So going back to the Chinese dynasties, um, there was the concept of mandate of the heaven, which is a lot to do with eclipses, and that is that basically the tyrant or the king that was assassinated basically lost the mandate of the heaven. Now, since sun rules king, it also rules leaders, and you want to think about when does one lose the mandate of the heaven? Because the people, they were considered the land. That's the moon. That's the ruler of the fourth house in natal chart mundanely, and so and the rulership of the king is from the heavens, so from the sky. Now, as we have the conjoining of Uranus on Beta Persei, and Uranus is associated with the heaven, associated with air signs, with Aquarius, and Beta Persei is associated with defender of the land. Okay, before everybody knew Beta Persei as the head of Satan. I'm sorry, there was no concept of Satan. And Christianity is the strongest we associate with Satan because they had Christ and Antichrist, and the stories of Satan, and before that Judaism, but there was no concept of Satan. Okay, the female goddess were goddesses of fertility, very simply put, whether it was Ishtar or Isis or Lilith, that is now in Spica, and it's a good time to call in Spica, or Beta Persei. Now, the only and the only reasons Egyptians would consider Beta Persei scary is simply because they build pyramids and connected with aliens, which is not a bad thing, but they were also using slavery. And Beta Persei, especially with Uranus now, is antidotal to slavery. You cannot have wealth when you are slave or enslaved. When I say wealth, it's on the deacon of tropical Taurus, it talks about the balancing of spirit and matter. So the concept of wealth, you think about the person who's sending a course. Okay, the dedication that they take to send to course someone, all this time Saturn they're spending on coursing. It's time that they will never have back. Okay, the people that spend their time Saturn on coursing, it is time that they will simply never have back. It doesn't earn them time, it actually takes away from their time, and curses usually backfire. If you curse somebody, it usually is a symbol that this person is meant to do magic or is meant to do something benefic. And it's particularly, you want to think what are you cursing them, and you want to understand what are they meant to do. If you're cursing them in those things, then they're meant to do things related to that. Let's say medical curse, they meant to be healer. Fertility curse, they're meant to do they're meant to be like goddess of fertility or god of fertility. Courses, glamour courses, okay? Glamour courses, it means that they are meant to be appreciated for their beauty. Visibility courses, silencing courses, they're meant to be heard. Okay? So you are spending time, you're playing a certain role, okay? You're spending time, and you will never get this time back, not ever. You're spending energy. Thinking about cursing their houses or their properties, they will never, like, they will, let's just say that if you curse their house or their property, I'm talking about a person that is aiming for their own house and property, okay, whether they have it or don't. Okay, and cursing for their own house or their own property or their housing or their ability to get assistance, okay, you are losing your throne. Especially if that was a person that used to bless an enemy. And I know that because I'm the person who used to bless an enemy. Okay, you get a person who used to bless an enemy to do a death curse on those who curse them, because you curse them with death, then what are you preparing them for? Okay, killing all those who curse them, because just returning to sender. That's the function of deneb algedi. Deneb algedi is ruled by Saturn, I think also Jupiter, and it is about, let's say if you have a night chart, then you want to work with deneb algedi. And deneb algedi is about sending that back. Okay, what you sent, you get back. What you say, you send curses to someone, you get it back. If you are such a good magician, you should know how to alchemize it and to change that, right? You send somebody curses on their property or their housing, their ability to make money, then you get it back. Especially if, and curses are already considered ritual abuse, by the way. Now, you want to think about societies where that was a costume. Okay, now we're already getting to the land, because there are the leaders and the kings and the royals, and they would try to make puppets to not lose their, to protect themselves during eclipses and so on. And again, there's only, as Lincoln said, there's only, you can electrocute some of the people some of the time, but you cannot electrocute all the people all the time and expected to call that, neurodivergence or psychosis or whatever psychiatric tag you put on whatever on their testimony, basically. And America sees that. The reason Rutte got a hold on Donald Trump, and it's nothing to do with Rutte and Donald Trump, but it's to do with organization. Rutte's got a hold on Donald Trump, but people don't understand. Trump can sing all day long, but when it comes to United States, if NATO exposes what they had to do, and they can, it's actually disobeying illegal order to do that. They can expose the CIA. They can expose MK Ultra, because that was a military operation. Rutte knows that. He's been those children. So was Trump. Rutte's got this much of a card. Now, it's not on Donald Trump. It's on the United States of America. So when you hear head of NATO saying, I'm not concerned about Trump, he knows what he's talking about. He's on the money. Now we get into organizations. Okay, we get into military organizations. And again, deneb algedi is about wealth redistribution. Now, we talked about leaders all day long, and we understand that the leader that is too corrupt, okay, will lose mandate of the heaven. That means they would be assassinated, or there would be this, or there would be that. Now, not every leader that is assassinated is lost the mandate of the heaven. Sometimes they lost the mandate of the CIA. But that is also being tended to, and just by the people that you think are reptilians and are elite and don't want to tend to. They are the children that nobody came to save. They hate MK Ultra more than you ever will. Okay? They hate satanic abuse more than Satan. Okay, that's very simply put. They dealt with that. When you're dealing with, like, astral rape or something like that, which is horrid, they're like, we're the people nobody came to save. They go, oh, finally you know what's energy. Okay, so of course that bifurcates to desire to hurt and stuff like that. But this is something to note, that then the sun is on deneb algedi. We have that point of wealth redistribution. But it's another thing that we have. Uranus, that is associated with Aquarius, is on Beta Persei. And Beta Persei is just this. Beta Persei has to do with being raped and not being believed. So she become what? Evil. You take the life force out of a person and then you psychologically abuse them. Then they become evil. And that evil is sent, they want that evil is used as a talisman, okay, to protect. Uh, but Beta Persei was a goddess of fertility, just like all the female goddesses. So we got to ask ourselves, what have we done to fertility? It's not for nothing. This is the middle decan of Taurus is the orgasmic decan, is the Yoni Lingam, okay? Yoni Lingam quoting Austin Coppock, but this is the orgasmic. This is the success that is actually fulfilling. Good balance of rest and work, and then we take it all the way back to spirit and matter. So we are successful, we have orgasmed, and now we can balance spirit and matter, because in the moment of actual orgasm, not hypnosis, not hypnotic commands, not control, nada. Okay, that's nada. That's the good balance between movement and stillness that creates that. And in that moment, people are aware. Even in physics department, they have researchers to look into the spiritual facets of the atom, of the atoms. Okay, that is where you become aware that there is spirit and matter. That it's all been, that there's more to that union. It's not to that duality, because we're in Taurus, we're in union. There's more to that union. A Beta Persei guards that union. She's the goddess of fertility. She's the goddess where she's not so, okay, she's having three phases. The third one is eclipse. Now, the reason we consider eclipse bad is because we have karma. Okay, those who did a lot of things that they were not supposed to do. Eclipses are usually, they take away something, fate that no longer serving, take that away, start something new. Okay, I began gardening around eclipses, around the Uranus eclipse in Taurus, and I said something is weird, but I feel that the need to do that, so I'll do that. And then I began, and then there was a complaint, the water. So I learned about reforestation, and I began to do that. And then I encountered omens for another Coppock talisman, which is a fiery wall of protection. And I tried to tend to his magical work as well, and curse it, very simply put. And then I moved the fuck out of the place. Apparently it was a human trafficking hub. And I wanted to do entire city human trafficking, okay? So that power of eclipses, I had to move the fuck out of there. It was not pleasant, it was not nice, it was not easy. But but my work, okay, is bringing back the water. To bring back the water, maybe they got to take down the city, because there's a lot of ritual abuse, okay? And even when a real estate agent harassed me, sexually harassed me, psychically harassed me, okay? I'm being very tender. I will never say a person permeated my energy, and that's the person that did that. If I don't know for 120%, that's the person, okay? I will never say that. And I will not be looking to test them either. I'll be looking to remove that. If I need to know that it's there, I'm gonna know that. But I'm not the type, like I'm not the type to go after heads. But the thing is, I had to move out of that place. And even then, I told the real estate, I said, they're trying, there's big cartels aiming for the city. They want to make it a human trafficking hub. They don't plan to keep you alive. You got to tend to the satanic abuse, because you made money. You sold a lot of houses to a community where they do satanic ritual abuse. Okay, you got to take care of the children. They're going to need houses. You have 100 properties. Okay, I was trying to find a solution. To the very second that I left, I was trying to find a solution. Okay. Now, what's that to do with tyranny is where something's been so corrupt, that's corrupted the land so much so that when you begin to refresh the land, to heal the land, to bring the land back to fertility, this is what the half moons do. I had people from the community, very nice people from the community, even community that does satanic ritual abuse. It doesn't mean that every person Okay, they were abused. That's to begin with, and it doesn't mean that they're not people. Okay, most communities in the world do that. That's the problem. The ritual abuse is pre-satanic and it's pre-Abrahamic, and we need to change that as humanity. So people were turning to me and said like, "Hey, is that your property? Do you want to sell?" And then they asked me, but I told them about the half moons, and that we need to have that also in the city structure. And they said, "Are you working the land?" Because we are working God. And I said, "It's no problem. Okay, but without God, I wouldn't be here. And I do this around the half moon because, okay, it doesn't mean I work. It doesn't mean I worship the land." And so of course, trying to communicate that, and I understood that. So to bring something good, that is the fertility of the land, okay, which is important for agriculture, is important for sustaining of food. For example, if you compare the Sahara half moons to Palestine, we understand that they're going to have to change the agriculture of Palestine, but they want to do it like the old way, which contributes to stagnation in the soil. Okay, so sometimes even old traditions should be changing. Pluto in Aquarius is a great time to rethink that. Um, Other habits, genitalia mutilation, killing the daughters that don't want to marry, okay, infanticide. Okay, we're not in Inuit community anymore. The Inuit, we need to help the Inuit. But if we are doing that as humanity, how can we help the Inuit? How can we honor the origin of humanity? Of course, if there are costumes to do genitalia mutilation to daughters, of course the place will be conquered. Okay, and I'm trying to very tenderly deliver the message here without doing blame shame. That being said, there is implication. There is implication for these actions. And if community is taking this action, doesn't tend to that, doesn't tend to that, doesn't tend to that, eventually something big happens. A lot of these communities that were doing those genitalia mutilation to women, they got conquered, they got evacuated, they got into places nobody wants the community. Because some people, they got into position where death is preferred upon living in those ways, okay? And if on the land of Palestine they were doing this, then of course it's going to happen like it happened in Africa, because you didn't stop that. I'm broadcasting from the land of Palestine. I know there are great movements in Africa that discusses removing these things, and so on. And also part of targeted individuals is forced sex change. I'm not talking about gender affirming care, to be very particular. I'm talking about the kidnapping and forcibly changing the sex of people. That is causing the war of the lodges, because it's like, hey, which lodge will tend to that? Which lodge will remove that practice or that curse? Um, so Soldan Balgadi is also that. This is the perfect place where just 2 degrees back, that is 22nd degree, we can think about the guillotine. Okay, we can think about the overuse of guillotine and the fact that not only kings and leaders died with the guillotine, but people, if you supported the king, and you think about the development of the guillotine, that was made to be a more humane death. Okay, now, just to say, it is still a Saturn rule sign. Saturn rules death, decay, boundaries. So Sun is in detriment because the Sun's role is to shine. But the detriment point is also removing the excess, removing the hubris, and removing tyranny. Now we had a full moon square in Uranus, T square in Uranus. That would mean that the deacon of Scorpio, and again to quote Kapok, is the deacon of nostalgia. But the deacon of Scorpio that deals with something that is of old lineage, bloodlines, fights that are no longer relevant, for example. That would be an argument that is no longer relevant, or something you no longer have to argue for, or alternatively, in the 22nd degree, cold cases. Okay, um, but this is a 24 degree, and that would be ruled by Mars. Mars is in the retrograde in 18 degree, trine in Saturn in 18 degree. So we're talking about toxins, the use of toxins, drugs, difficult to diagnose diseases, to do with curses as well, because Saturn is involved. Okay, medical curses, debt. Okay, uh, to be very particular, in the sign of Jupiter, it also rules curses to someone's expansion, curses to do with incest. There are literal curses that people will experience incest. That's, yes, horrid. And will have difficult to diagnose diseases. That is, for example, Candida. Did you know that Candida is about chronic lack of will and consent? You don't eat carbs because you're hungry for carbs. You eat carbs because, and there's nothing wrong about carbs in the right dosage, but you overeat, or you eat overly sweet things, or overly this, overly that, after those experiences, because there is excess here. That's the excess of Jupiter, okay? Because other than that, Jupiter is an abundance of healthy food. And again, I'm not talking about everybody's diabetes. That's not the point. Diabetes can be associated with many other things, and I'm not here to be of testimony to everybody, to anybody else. Um, but definitely, with those traditions where nobody talked about will and consent, and a woman was just expected to would do whatever, and the man was expected to bring children. Then we had the poisoning of the husband. We had problems. Okay, you think about those relations as sugar levels that do lead to diabetes and stagnation and uh, um, neural diseases. Okay, neural degeneration, blood degeneration, and so on and so forth. It's not for nothing that biodiversity is important to procreation, and um, and not okay, to prolong a lineage of incest. I can say my grandfather survived the Holocaust. Okay, um, eventually he married a woman that was from a different origin, still Jewish, but uh, way younger than him, indeed, North European. Okay, so I'm not talking about other cultures. Um, the question persists: is if did the entire family of my grandfather died in the freaking Holocaust, because they were in a tiny rural village in Sarny next to Kiev, um, and it was conquered consecutively. But you want to think about these isolated villages. I don't know anything about the family. Okay, the family name was Suller. Literally, okay, hardly anybody carries the family name, but it's a big question. Okay, if we talk about it, and I like to talk about it from my lineage, because it's not about pinpointing another person, and it's a good example of what we should all be doing. Could it be that that horrid extinction went because it was better for the children than to have ancestral relations, or other things that could be in the family that we don't know of? Could there be that there was inside the family a tradition where people would inbreed, and they would inbreed with young kids or young boys? What is a tradition? What are traditions of ritual abuse? That on the scale, Holocaust is a horrible death, but so is living with those things, and not even being able to speak, and not even knowing what it is, because you expect it, like you're not even expected to think that that's wrong. So if I'm doing that shadow work as to my lineage, and it could be that that's not the case. Okay, I don't know, but the thing is that if I'm doing that shadow work to my lineage, um, then it's about all of us doing that shadow work to our lineages. And understanding that that brings extinction. It's simply, if you inbreed, it brings extinction of the origin. We call it the race or the bloodline. And just as you want to preserve something, so you want to have a boundary around that, you also want to have, if the boundary is too complete, then you don't have any permeability, your immune system deteriorates. That is true. Okay. As an aromatherapist, yes, the oils are very good purifiers, but they're purifiers if your child works in the soil, plays in the land, and even in Finland, they did a research. They found out it's a very cold country that the children that go and play outside, they don't get that immune system. Now, you think about the royalty families, they are very excluded from that type of lifestyle because they have to protect themselves a lot. Wealth redistribution is a great remedy. One example is King of Morocco that exemplified solar energy, and he survived the Arab Spring, whereas Bashar al-Assad, that deals with a completely different situation demographically, but also not, okay, because King of Morocco, I think he married a Jewish woman. Um, it's still, it's not perfect, right? It would have to be will and consent and so on. Um, and the consent, it has to be consent. It cannot be something that, like, you make a person say yes about, do you want fruit, and then you're like, oh, we tie them up in a spiritual contract to Baphomet. Okay, that's not consent. um, and that is important. um, and so one way to talk about it, talk about the community, is to say, you see those tribes that they do that, they do this to the girls, they do that, that brings extinction. And then immediately say, we don't do that, we only with consent, with only this, with only that. And you say, okay, but you deliver the message, they understand that that brings extinction. um, and in those trying times, the question you need to be asking yourself is a very natural question. So then, if algedi deals with exactly that. So then, algedi deals with exactly that, those questions. Sun is ruling the father, the leader, and the T squared to Uranus reminds us that wealth redistribution is also to do with will and consent. And the story of Sedna is actually important here, even without the aspect from Pluto and so on. It's just important because you want to think about Sedna when she died. Okay, she turned to the guard of the underworld, and the shaman had to have the special touch to, uh, um, okay, to basically comb her hair, and he had to have a special touch. You want to think about touch. Sedna is now in Mercury sign, which rules the hands and rules touch, and you want to think about how those embodied symbolism, because like nobody could touch her, but that when that man touched her, that was okay. And want to think about what is behind the touch. Was that the touch that was a loving touch? Was that the touch that was embracing and not requiring anything from her? Was that the touch that was compatible with her? Okay, then in Indian astrology, we would have moon compatibility, which has to do with our sexual organs, even. So you want to think about those stories that are, we talk about wealth redistribution. So, of course, in the past, it included women. But then we have the square from the spirit of matter that has to do with will and consent, and has to do with not to rape. So it is tension from the sense of everybody has to have so and so and so, and it's important not to do it by rape. When we talk about finances, I think there are a lot of philosophers that dealt with that. Should we have taxation? Should we? Is it okay? Is it moral to have taxation? Should we rely on donation? What is the issue? What is? And this is a genuine. It's a genuine square. Okay, it's a genuine tension. But it's also Sedna that's reminding us that if we don't manage to hold that tension, and we outcast people from housing, from food, then essentially, and we force them to have sexual relations that are candida bringing, okay, that are ailment disease bringing, because it is rape, on them and on everyone, okay, anybody that participates that in that, then what if essentially we are talking about is extinction of humanity and extinction of those resources. This is why all the currencies are on beta per se, but people are not taught the correct form of beta per se. Okay, and this is how we have snake goddess monasteries that are used to ritual human sacrifice and rape of infants. Okay, they torture them in the womb and they rape them, and they do it in elite society. It's not just like a tribe in I don't know, Ekveld. Um, and when that happens, we basically return things over. So even if you're the wealthiest in the world, you don't have wealth. Okay, and it's not necessarily about blaming a god. It's like if your god got you to the way that you practice this, then you're practicing, well, whichever your god is, you're probably practicing your god wrong. Okay, be it a snake goddess, or even Baphomet, which is a sort of mercurial entity. Okay, if you think about Baphomet, I learned about what is this Baphomet that they sacrifice to, or this horn god, or this or this that. Well, it's a mercurial entity that does the mix, that brings union to polarities, and polarity to union. Okay, it's not a bad thing, but there's a dosage, and if you overdose on that, and you actually got to the point where you explore it all the way to torturing children in the womb, then you're not working Baphomet anymore. You're just okay. You're just creating something that is that perpetuates itself in a malefic way. I was addressing the fact that we are basically, when we look at the kidnapped children, children of the war, and so on, we're basically asking the children nobody came to save the children, and that is a gigantic paradox. So in this lunation, it's a good time to ponder about, okay, the loss of the mandate of the heaven because of not paying attention to, are we raping people to do that? Now, the tension is tension, okay? You think about the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment, a lot of people have problems with that because they made their entire wealth counting on the fact that they are going to ignore the First and Second Amendment. And that's been done. But then you get like, if you're going to be corrupt, there's always going to be someone more corrupt than you. That's the story of corruption. If you're going to be corrupt, there's somebody always more corrupt than you. And so, but when you tend to the roots of corruption, essentially, the people need to be loved, people need to have spirit and matter, wealth. If your society is filled with inbred, incestual relations, that eventually people become neurodivergent, or they become unable to work, or they work 3 jobs but they don't have a house, and all you have to do is, hey, why is this person lives on my account, they don't live on your account, stop the incest, stop the rape, stop the satanic abuse, and they will have a job. But then you will say they are taking your jobs. You see that tension is tension, because if you take from a person so much so that they don't have anything left, you're supposedly successful in your so-called victory, now they become evil. That how they create evil, it's a scientific thing, okay? They torture infants in the womb, then they rape them when they come out of the womb, and then they satanically ritually abuse them. Then they instill them with all kinds of personalities, where the love is only if you do that, where the affection is only if you do that, and the this and the that is to torture other parts of humanity, and that's how they manufacture evil. There's a science to that. So how do we antidote evil? Well, willing consent, upbringing that is good, providing with resources, having children, having a childhood, having the yes, no, and maybe. That in itself, when we think about how many children can we have this way, well, not a lot, but those that you do have, okay, those that you do have, first of all, they will live a different life. They will be able to dedicate themselves to other things. Okay, and this is how we get to people exploring astrology in the middle of nowhere. Okay, it's not just by torture and stuff like that, it's by sheer curiosity. And that when a person has good upbringing, they have a situation. You see, a person, two people go homeless. One person never got any love in their life. One person got a lot of love in their life. Okay, person got a lot of love in their life. They will try to use every trick in the book from all their working experience to get the fuck out of this situation. So I was doing astrology when I was in the shelter for homeless people, and I was delineating for the housing problem in the country that I was at. Okay, I tried to use that privilege, and I was helping everybody around. You say you manifest the house, you manifest the house, you manifest the house. Little did I know that there were the people that got even quicker than me housing because they did not have the nationality. I did have the nationality. Another person got no love at all. Okay? So they can be trafficked, they can be this, they can be that. Which way everybody can, it can happen to everybody, but they have less resilience to that. And they have less ability to try new things and to experiment and to do that or to do that or to do that. They have less the ability to do that. They never got any rest in their life, so they need actually to rest. And then people go and tell them, oh, go have a job here, go have a job there. But if they never got to rest, they cannot work. And then they're more susceptible to become more corrupt, okay? So that is the story of corruption. This is the story of corruption. Now, some of this can be hidden. Some person grew up in a family, wealth family, everything is fine, everything is good, but they got cursed. Okay, and some of the family was in a secret society or something, they got cursed. Annika Lucas said that when she left, that when she was smuggled away from the cult, okay, she talks about MK Ultra and she talks about Masonry and so on, and Mormons were affected by Masonry and so on. So she says she did not have ability to make money until she did not remove for the curse that was placed upon her to not make money, because they wanted her to not be able to make money without the cult. It's not about sex work. It's about using that as espionage. It's about killing. She said she had 9 years old, she refused to kill. Thus she was punished. Okay, want to listen to our interview on Epoche. So Sol, Deneb, algedi, and the full moon lunation holds tension. And this tension is very real. But also we must remember that the people we don't provide for, they eventually, okay, eventually what they have to give is from the perspective that is mercy killing to destroy everything and everyone, not destroy by torture. This is where the guillotine came from. Okay, so when you think about what would be assisted death, okay, every killing is mercy killing. This Annika Lucas also state that, but I've went through such experience in other ways before watching her, and that's a part of this spiritual warfare. Okay, when you go through this, then you see to kill the people, to do that, every killing is mercy killing. We're talking about the eclipses upcoming in March, I think, if I listen to Crasia Tassio, has to do with uh, temples, cities, ships, destruction of those. And you want to think about what happens when the monastery has been practicing under the counter such things that for those that survived that or those that within that, they already see that every killing is mercy killing. Okay, in 7th of October, the birthday of Putin, um, 2023, whole villages in Israel saw the reality of what happens when people are grown to such degree, and it's not their culture, it is that they were tortured so much so that they believed every killing is mercy killing. I'm not talking about those that read ritual abuse of torture, that was not that. I'm talking about people that began to shoot families and said now they are in better place, and they believed that. That is where they believe every killing is mercy killing. And then there are the people who tortured people that already in the point where they try to get something outside of the body. And that a part of that what they try to get outside of what is not just the torture that they've been through, but also the drugs that they have been put through. That's your common psychiatric drugs. You don't have to be too scared, but you're invested in that. If your 401k is invested in that, and if your life insurance is invested in that, you are invested in the in those things. Okay, in those type of currencies. Then algedi again is talking about wealth redistribution. Something I saw regarding housing in Israel. They evacuated people and then they give welfare to people that are evacuated to get housing, but they only do that to people who are registered at the address. Now, the only reason somebody would not be registered in the address is they are running away from violence. So they're not registered because they don't want somebody to see them, and they cannot count on those who put them there to get them out of there, which would be the welfare and the services, the social services. Which basically means that those people are so easily recruitable because they don't have housing solutions, and they already went out of violence. Okay, if you I don't like to shoot the Hitler word. Um, but there was a nice episode about Charlie Chaplin and Adolf Hitler that had the same chart. And if you think about the cults that they both grew up in, you can think about, well, would they meet at the same Peter ring at the Epstein? It's a question. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, but it's a question that we can and should perhaps ask ourselves um, when we come to tackle these things. Because Charlie Chaplin was allowed to do art, and then he mocked tyranny, um, and Adolf Hitler was not allowed to do art, and then he was a tyrant. And that's also something we need to ponder about. So you can watch the episode with Nick Dagenbest and Chris Brennan on the Astrology Podcast. But you understand that, okay, if you provide the only antidote other than to grow with love and provide resources is death. and it could be either by what people call is every death is assisted death. Okay, every killing is mercy killing, which would be the guillotine or something of that sort. Okay, there's a sacropag, and those things they don't they can get wrong. Okay, and for example, we talk about execution with nitrogen. Okay, the execution supposed to be euphoric death, but it was the 22 minutes that were the hardest for those who witnessed that. So probably they did something wrong. Probably it was not a sarcopag, which it could have been. And it's true they killed murderers and this and that. But you want to think about the spirit facet of this. Do we really want to create a situation where it's challenging to cross? It's challenging to cross. Okay, now we want to think about doors and boundaries, and when do we want it to be challenging to cross or to cross over? Okay, when do we want to place the challenges and when do we not? And is it really correct to place these challenges when we are killing someone so that they will not kill again, when we know that the creation of evil is by evil alone? You want to think about those who enjoy hurting others. Well, if they're put in a situation where they have to kill, they have to have life force to do that, and that needs to bring them joy. That is the I don't know etymology of the action of sadism. Okay, it's like if you have to do that and you need the life force to do that, then you make a party out of that. Okay. Um, and that is the etymology of people, and later that affects the nervous system because it's trauma to both the offenders and so on. But still, if people genuinely stop these practices, the unboiling an egg is even possible when it comes to evil, more so than we think, and I've witnessed that as well. That is not to undermine the fact that if you see people, oh, this person, they everything you give them, everything, they don't rehabilitate. But what you don't see is that when they go to work, they're surrounded by the courses or by these calls. When they go to housing, when they go to this, when they go to that, they try to date people. They will only meet the programmed people. We had a story like this with Feynman. Feynman was a great physicist, had a lovely wife. She died from tuberculosis. Tuberculosis was it? I don't remember what was the reason that Feynman's wife died. It could be she was assassinated. Okay, that was another course, or another, or or that's not just the course. It just poisoned her or something like that. And then, of course, he was grieving his wife. He knew that she was having this disease when they married, and he loved her very much. Um, and then he would begin to you got corrupted by the cult, so the dating began to be with such things like try to date women, and nobody responds to your being nice and courteous to her. Of course, he was also a grieving and angry man, so it's very challenging. It's like a woman. It's not because he was. It's not because of his loss, but it's like, are you able to move on and love another woman right now, or do you need time to grieve? Nobody. There was nobody to tell him that. What there was is to try to get him to. I'm sorry, fuck as many women, and the women that he was placed around, they were the women that Hans Smedema had to deal with later in '73, which were the women that were raped, electrocuted, and programmed to be having sex in ways that are malefic to them. They were programmed to be raped and supposedly to enjoy it only when it is rape or something like that. I actually knew a woman from an Orthodox community that had this problem. Then she tried psychiatric drugs, or she tried this, she tried that. She had to change with the way that she reaches orgasm because she was attracting people who were only very violent to her. Okay, so so he never actually met a woman that was not within this within that. And if you ask Hans Medema, he used to call his wife a whore for a lot of time. Fortunately, that stopped with the recent videos. But the fact is that his wife did not deny him sex. Is that his wife never knew how to have willingly consensual sex, and it was forced marriage to begin with for both of them. And so it means that they were not even the ability to be sexual. So for that man, and then he tried to communicate in the cult way, because he said, well, it doesn't work any other way, let's try this way. And he said, I lost respect for these women. In the book, instead, this was one woman he did that. But we know in reality it was so much so that when a woman told him no, he said she's worse than a whore. They took the grief, okay, a person that was already grieving, which already is a point of helplessness, and then they try to play on that and to prey on that. A lot of the people that you would see that they try to get them to do human trafficking and the Epstein rings and stuff like that, they prey on that. Okay, you lost a father, you lost someone you love, you lost I don't know, for a child for some people, and then they try to get you at that. And then sometimes, okay, those things, and have you noticed that most people, when they are dealing with these problems, and nobody's going to give them like rose essential oil or something. What they're going to give them is, hey, take that pill against depression. Hey, take that pill so you can sleep. But it's not only you sleep, but also your little one sleeps as well. And then you're like, okay, the things that gave you life are completely taken out of it. It's like, hey, you can get your life back if you sniff that and fuck that. Now, you wouldn't know that because they already put something in your drink and they already put something in your food. And now you have to take accountability when there was not a you to begin with. Sometimes the only way for a person to know what happened to them is for them to agree to participate in that. And that's how you get the Rolodex files. So how to antidote that? I guess that when people like Anneke Lucas talk about love and awareness, they're not joking. It's not the language of weakness. It's a language of people that have been through everything. And the understanding that within those sex that love and awareness is almost triggering, there will be love. But then to juxtapose love with those things that they had to do, and try to bridge them, it creates a lot of almost chemical reactions in the brain, okay, that trigger a lot of things that the cult wanted to trigger. And as a person who tends to try to alleviate that corruption, I have witnessed some of these responses, whether they were from my therapist or they were from even when I was channeling, and then I don't know where it came, or person that I was contacting, whether it was a scheme to assassinate them or whatnot. Yeah, so it's not simple. I don't have a simple antidote. But it's just also to remember that all in all, the more we tend to that, the more we prevent extinction, I think would be the most diplomatic and loving way to put that.